Hello, I'm George Gonzalez. I'm obsessed with making games, and today is Multiplayer Monday. Today we're going to talk about cosmetics and how to network those. And we're going to talk about VR, non-VR, and my main focus is to help you understand the principles. You can follow along, you can copy the code. I don't care. But my focus is not to give you step by step, but help you understand the logic and the principles so that you can do your own thing with whatever that is and whatever you want to do, because oftentimes most of the tutorials out there will be very specific and they'll teach you the code, but then you're like, well, what if I want to do this one thing, or what if I'm doing other platform? How do I do that? So I want to teach you principles that you can then expound on. And so let's talk. I'm going to visually, I have a diagram here to show you a little bit of what's going on. We will be doing the yellow stuff, basically. That's all. The blue stuff is not network. We're going to do part one today, where we go over the scripts, and then next week I'll show you after everything's set up. Okay, and then I'll show you the setup and how it's working, and I'll play and show you live how it's working in the game. And honestly, there's a lot of things that you can learn, but cosmetics are huge in multiplayer games. So if doing other things is very few things will give you as much return in value as cosmetics. So it's easy money once you set it up. Okay, so I've talked about it before and I showed others. Let's start with just the network aspect, and then at the end, by the end you'll know exactly how to do cosmetics in your game and specifically for your avatar. So let's start with the difference between VR and non-VR. Okay, so in here we have a local player. Usually when you do a single player game, you have an avatar controller. Usually in Unity it's called character controller. What happens is that usually with a multiplayer game that's not VR, usually you can get away with just having a networked character controller, and that will be networked across others. And so you'll get these two with just one network character controller. But the problem in VR and other is that you need a lot of functionality that's specific to VR that you don't need the character to know about. And so usually it's more decoupled in VR games. But even if it's not a VR game, you might decide to decouple some things. Some things that are specifically to the local player, like a first-person shooter. Oftentimes the camera is different in first person than for other players. So this happened when we made Knockback, the student game in Unreal. We had the rig for the first person shooter was not a full rig. It was just a fake. It was just arms, the gun, and then you just point where you're looking. And so that's all you needed. But then when you have other people see you, how do you translate that into so that other people can see your avatar? And so you have two different rigs, one for the first person shooter and the other one for the network clients. So that's something that we got to think about. And then the other thing is, if you have specifically here, if you have cameras, in VR, we have live cam, which you can record yourself. And if you're streaming or you're doing other things where you can see yourself from a different, like a selfie camera, all those things will require another camera that's rendering. Or if a spectator camera, oftentimes will have a different visual. And for that, you need to be aware of, okay, what does the local player see with the non-network and the network stuff? So what happens usually, this networked rig will have models because it needs to network, in this case, the cosmetics and your look, your avatar. This has to be hidden from the local player. Otherwise, you'll see two of the same. You'll see your arm lagging behind. And so that's why we don't just show this, is because usually this has a little bit of lag on the network object. And so we focus on, you see the most up-to-date information, your inputs. Okay? And in VR, this is huge. You can't have like any kind of lag with your inputs because you are constantly moving. And so we focus, this is how it's done. Okay. So we have that set up. Once we have that set up, the way cosmetics work is that we have a loadout that's saved. So when you change, let's say I change my hat. And so we have some kind of loadout that saves that information of what I currently have. And so we have the two ways that these things are modified are with the back end, like if something was saved and I'm loading for the first time, or if I have an equipment station where I swap cosmetics. And so these runtime changes will trigger a change in the local player loadout, which will then trigger the networked object. And so this is what we're going to work on, is taking these values that are being changed and then saying, okay, we have internal data on what these cosmetics are. We have a scriptable object that has information on what we need. And so we then can trigger those changes and make sure it's relayed to all the clients. So when I swap my hat, there'll be a local change and then there's a network change. And so those two things have to be taken care of. And because this is multiplayer specific, our focus is going to be this guy. How do we change a network. And how do we lay it out so it's understandable? And this is where it's up to you how you want to group things together. So I'm going to show you this is what we're going to work on, but I have another code because I already did this before with the row patterns. We have an equipment station, and if we go into the rig, we have all these in here cosmetic setup. So you can see like we have when the main color changes, when the secondary color changes, when the right eye color, the left eye color, the row pattern, and we have the mesh, and then we swap them out. And we still haven't done any of these. So we can have things in the main rig. So this is the VR Fusion rig, where we have this guy, and I have all these references for the cosmetic setup. As you here, I'm gonna, you have all these objects. Okay. So, but this can get very tedious because then if the more cosmetics you have, the longer the script. And so I'm gonna decouple it a little bit, but it's still the same context. So I'm gonna show you. It's the same idea. This VR Fusion rig is this object that's networking things to the other layers. Okay. And so I'm gonna walk you through this as I'm decoupling it because now I have different cosmetics. So if you look at main avatar, so that you can get the idea of how this works. Oh, okay, so if we have this main avatar, eventually we're going to display. So this is an avatar that I'm working on to get new cosmetics. And so as you can tell, this is a little bit bigger. I'm in the works of figuring this out. But okay, so in this avatar, we have different cosmetics. So I'm going to show you. So in here, for example, let's say we have this scarf. We can have like this scarf or this one. And in these, let me make sure. I'm going to change them right now. These. Okay, so we have they're all textured and they all work fine. You can swap them in and out. So let's say this this belt. We have OG belt and the main belt. Okay, so we have two belts. So we're not gonna load all the cosmetics at runtime and just have them turn on and off. Okay, because that's gonna take forever. And then we have the robe. We don't have any on, and then we have the scarf, OG scarf. So this one. Okay, so let's say we have that, and then the hoodie, the OG hoodie. Let's say, okay, and then we have, there's a main mask in here somewhere. Gotta grab it. It's not gonna fit the same way. Let's. Okay, so we have this. Okay, we have. Okay, these are the cosmetics we're gonna swap out. So how do we do this? Okay, so we have this empty object. So the idea with the game object, and I'm gonna fix these, is that we'll be able to zero out these, spawn these at runtime. Okay, and I'll show you the setup next week when we go over. But right now, I want to show you the thought process of how we go about these cosmetics. So I have a networked cosmetic display. Okay, so this is like the most basic setup that we can. Okay, so let's object saved. Okay, so we have the network object, and then so that's right here. Okay, so we have this. We have nothing. Okay, let me. Okay, we don't have anything. We just have in here. I'm gonna put it in network behavior. Okay, and we have spawn cosmetic ID. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna set it up from scratch, and I'm gonna try to talk through my thought process so that you can understand what's going on. The first thing we need, okay, is this. Is the data object. So we have an inventory scriptable. So scriptable object inventory list. Okay, so this is gonna hold all the inventory. Okay, and then we have the network. And then say int. You can have an int or a string. I have a, I'll show you, but I'm gonna do it by int. Because what will happen is we'll get the string that way. So that way the network thing is an int instead of a string. Because the string, I don't know, the bandwidth is a little bit smaller. I'll show you now. Let me see. So we have inventory index. Okay. So we're gonna grab the inventory. Oh, sorry. Okay. Set. So this is specifically for Fusion, but it works similarly in any other game. You can network the index or you can do the string. So if you do the string, it's straightforward, pretty strict. Let me get this set up. We have in networked, we have a spawn mechanic. So you always have to think about how the network solution works with spawning objects, right? Because you're always going to be spawning. Okay, so this is a network behavior. When the rig spawns, when the avatar, your avatar spawns, you are either spawning as the owner, you're spawning the rig, or it might be someone spawning it. So for example, let's say I'm loading into the game and I'm playing this game and my friend comes and joins later. When he joins, he is spawning this rig on their end, on the network. And so this is going to trigger for them too, but they're not going to be the owners. And so, and here is the client logic. So this is specifically for my friend that joins after. And so we're going to have a, let's just do setup client. Okay, so we know that that's what we're doing here. So we don't get lost, okay? And okay, so far I think everything makes sense. Okay, we have the object spawns. Now what do we do? Okay, so what we're gonna do is we have this local variable. Also remember the loadout that we talked about. Local player loadout. So player loadout. So this is specifically for me. We don't want to do it on the client. So if I go back to my mirror, remember we said we have the local player loadout and the internal data. Okay, so those are the two things we're going to be playing with or adjusting or figuring out. So these two are those things we need. Okay, now we have the index, and that's going to change. So we could say, okay, so then what we're going to do is say, that's what I'm trying to figure this out as we do stuff. Okay, so this is the index. Okay, so the other thing we're gonna do is on change render. So this is specifically when this value changes, okay? Void on inventory changed. And this can change. I might be I'm trying to decouple as much as I can because usually I do it all in one script. And so I want to show you a way that could help you make sense of all this and be able to scale multiple things. Okay. Like this is like the refactoring thing. Whoops. So name of okay. Here all we're doing is saying okay, like we want when this change, we want this to update. So in here we're inventory index changed. Okay. So this is specifically for any cosmetic. It doesn't matter what they are. Okay. And I'm going to show you in this list. We have this inventory list. In here we have spells and we have cosmetics, and we have each one has a. Okay, so as we okay, so in here I can say okay, give me the cosmetic data from a string. And this one is get me the cosmetic index, and I give you the string, and it'll go through this and it'll return the index if it's there. And this should return a -1 if it's not there, because 0 might be an index, so that's bad. Okay. And then cosmetics, and then if we do have an index and it's not 1, we'll grab that. Okay. So this is the data, and the reason why I have these is because I want to deal with ints instead of strings for the network object. Okay. And these were always going to be updated as we go, so it's not a big deal. Like even if the order changes, so here we have to assign these. Here we have inventory data and local player. Okay, and this cosmetic is specifically for the scarf, but we're gonna decouple it in a way that it doesn't matter what it is. It will grab the ID and it will give you what it is. Okay, it doesn't matter. Eventually, if we did want to separate it, we could separate by class and say, okay, give me the list of all the classes and give me the index of scarf. So we could do that, but for now, this works, and it will work for as many, even if we have 1,000 cosmetics. Okay, but at that point, if you want to refactor and do per type, we can do that too. Okay, so this display, all it's going to do is, did my value change? And the moment, yes, if it did, it's going to update. Okay. The other thing is that in order to set up the client, we are going to load player loadout. So this one's the one where you have to check, okay, do we have anything saved? And in here we have all the different IDs, right? And I'll show you where we change that. So you don't have to worry about this. Let's go back here. Okay, so it's spot. We need anything. I don't think we'll need to set up any of these. Usually, okay, we won't set it up. Or will we? No, yeah, we will. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab the inventory list. When we set up the client, we're gonna say, okay, we're gonna grab the ID, string cosmetic ID equals. So we are gonna do inventory list. And I think we're gonna be able to get cosmetic. So this is gonna give me the the cosmetic from index. Okay, Then we're going to give it the network inventory index. Okay. What happened? Oh, to string. Okay, and then we grab the ID, MID, because we have the cosmetic, and the cosmetic data for that has the ID. Okay, so we have the ID, spawn cosmetic. Here. Okay, so that we have that. I think what we can do is in here, we're gonna do the same thing. So we don't need this because every time this changes, this index changes, we need to update it. So we're gonna do on inventory changed, spawn cosmetic. Okay, so how do we spawn the cosmetic? Okay, we need to save. Okay, because this we will already have another cosmetic. What I mean is that we have to take into account the fact that they'll have the main cosmetic, the original one will be there. So we need to data. And what we could do is always leave it empty. So what we could do is say remove these two and not have anything. Then we just spawn. The row will always be there, but even that could change. So this could maybe not be there. Okay, so we could have almost nothing, but then when it spawns, it loads. Okay. Okay. So we have, let's save current cosmetic and do the game object that's spawned. Okay. So anytime we spawn the cosmetic, we want to go like this: spawn cosmetic equals setup. Okay. So we have this inventory list, right? Inventory list dot get cosmetic by ID. Okay. And I know there's a lot of back and forth, but you got to understand that this is going to happen on the client and the owner. Okay. The owner has all the information. The client doesn't. But if you wanted to take a shortcut, you could just network this string. And you could say on inventory change, just do this. So you could cut the middleman, right? You don't need this, you could just do this. The moment the string changes, well, that string is there. The problem that I don't like with this is that you have to set a limit for the network object if you wanted to. And what happens is usually artists will not be conscious of that. And what happens is if you put a limit to 30 characters, the artist might end up using 31. They're not going to count. They're going to start naming things, and they might add a crazy name or a funny name. And so for the sake of that, I'm like, I don't care how long the name is. You can name it whatever you want. We're just going to get the index, spawn it. Okay? Because you can do resources.load to load the prefab or the cosmetic data, whatever you want to do. But I do it this way. I have this cosmetic data component that has the prefab. So I deal with it. The only thing is the ID map. Okay, so we grab the data, grab the prefab that we want to spawn, and we spawn it. And we spawn it in here. Like the local position is 0. So the transform is this object. So if you look in here, let me finish this one. Get cosmetic, layer loadout dot. What did we want it to do? Which one is it? Oh, so here's what we have to figure out. So we can't do. Okay, so this has to be in here, and I'll show you how we are gonna fix it. Public void update. Update. Spawn cosmetic. Okay, so we're gonna do it like this: string ID, and so this is regardless of who it is. We could actually make it public. Okay, need the local player. We won't need this local player loadout. So the thing is that we want this to be generic. So we don't need this. Okay, so this is all we need for. Okay, we're gonna spawn the cosmetic, and if there is a previous one here, this is in case there's a previous one. And but the idea is that this makes sure that we are on the default layer. Again, like we talked about with this, that this is default visibility for everyone. It should not be. So we're going to change the order. So the way we're going to do it, all these cosmetics are going to have default values, but this is specifically for the owner. So let's say in here, if as state authority, what we're going to do is configure the on cosmetic, not default. So this is the layer that's the camera, not for the layer. The camera, I mean the camera. Okay, so this is if you want to do like for every component in the render. Okay, for the cosmetic, this is cosmetic only, so it's just that one when it spawns. And that's only if it has multiple mesh render. Hopefully it's only one, and you don't have to do that. So we have that. But I wanna make sure that we're not copy pasting code, a lot of switch statements. And I have another networked display, and this one will focus on type, and I'll have to figure out how to do this, okay? So in here, let me do network cosmetic. So we have this manager. The idea with this manager is we're not gonna do any of these. They're gonna be networked, and we're gonna have the local player. Have the inventory list and the local player loadout. We might not even need this. Hence, okay. So we have an inventory change. We grab the index, the item ID. Okay, so now okay, so in here we'll have cosmetics, and we can change this. I'll figure it out as we go. But let's say we have cosmetic display. So this one, say it's a scarf, or we can have a type too. Let's try it. Okay, so let's say we have the scarf, and so when we spawn, what we're gonna do is instead of doing all these, or oh no, we can keep these. Set up client. This is gonna be for everybody. So let's say we have the scarf, and I'll do it once, and then we'll duplicate it because it's coming together in my head, and I want to show you like the thought process behind it. I don't want to just come to you, oh, it's finished. Here's how you do it. Unless that's what you want, you guys, we can do that. But I want you to. Okay, so we're thinking about it. Okay, the reason why I took it out of the display is because I want this to be generic, right? This is a cosmetic display for any display. Okay, so we want to decouple it. So this network script does not know what cosmetic type it is. Every cosmetic will be spawned the same way. It'll be on the same layer, and it'll be right. And if we need to adapt, every cosmetic should be the same. So this keeps you organized so that you don't have one. Oh, but this one has 20 renders, or this one has 3, and this one has VFX, and this one doesn't. And it's like, no, like all the cosmetics are going to behave the same way. And if we change one, it'll change for everything. And we're going to do it in this code. Now, we could have done a switch statement here and said, okay, well, depending on which cosmetic type is, do this, do that, do that. But I don't want to, because this is like the refactor version, okay? And so that's what I'm showing you. Okay, how do we do this then? Well, in here we have a manager. This manager is going to know which cosmetic is which, and I'll show you how to do it, and you'll see how simple this is, okay? And it's a lot better than just to barf it all in one script, okay? Because we're focusing on the network aspect and at the same time organization, so that we can scale. So we have a scarf. We spawn. Okay, what do we do? Well, we want to make sure that this scarf, if I have state authority, the index, right, because inventory index is updated to the version. So what we're going to look is we're going to have the inventory list dot get cosmetic index and local player loadout dot scarf. I think. Let me see what we have. Okay, so we might not have it. So we have row pattern ID, hood ID, scarf. Oh, scarf. And then it's not here, it's in here. So we need to have this public string. Okay, so we have, okay, so we're trying to figure out right-hand spells, left-hand spells, hex. Okay, so this one's when the ID changes. And this can be a string because this is local. Again, this is the logic that I showed you in here. This is right here. So we're just looking into this because I need to type some things. Okay, I'm gonna say on public ID changed, on scarf changed. Okay, now I gotta figure out where that is, and then I gotta put scarf ID right in here. So like this. So we have scarf ID. And the reason I do this, you'll see in a second, because we're gonna subscribe to this event. And this is scarf ID. And then we're gonna copy paste here, value on scarf ID, or on scarf changed, maybe scarf ID. We're gonna change this here. CG. Okay, so we have the change, but we need to load it, right? Because we have these. So for example, scarf ID, incoming data, scarf ID. This is just to save it to the backend, but I just want to do it now while I'm in here. so that we can move on. Okay, so this is what I would do. This is what I'm gonna do later on my own time. Just do it for all of them. I'm just showing you the process for adding one. Once it's added, I can just copy paste and do the same thing like I did here. We have scarf ID. We also will have scarf color, scarf patterns. And so each one will have the ability so you can switch the colors, the pattern, and the type. Okay. And maybe we don't. Maybe we just have them all at the same ID and no pattern change. Okay, that could be a thing. Let's see. So we have this. Okay, so now that we have this information in here, what we're gonna go in back in the manager and say, okay, this is the int index, okay, for scarf index. Okay, equals inventory, because we spawned the avatar, right? We are moving into a scene, and the fusion rig, the rig, the avatar needs to display the correct things. What is the loadout? Scarf ID. Okay, so if this inventory, if and you'll see that this is going to get long regardless of what we do, but it's better to have it here than to have it in the other logic. Scarf index. Scarf index is not equal to -1, right? So if it's not -1, we found the match. It's either 0 through whatever. Then we have scarf index equals. And if it's not that, it should be 0 though. That's right. Okay, sorry. Hold on. This should be 0 because that's just the main. We don't want it to be null. It'll be default regardless. So we'll do that. Okay, so we'll so that's my bad. So we don't need to check. Okay, there you go. We don't need to check because regardless of what it is, it'll return a 0. Okay, so now we're good. There's not gonna be a null. If it doesn't find it, it will give you the original, the one that everyone should have. Okay, so we have that. Index 0 might not be the correct one. Okay, so I got in here to do, and I'll update you guys next week. The 0 might not be default. Okay, so we need to figure out a way to say, okay, if the value is not found, what is the default? And what we could do is, in here, we could write a find cosmetic. We could do a get cosmetic. At that point, there's something wrong, but we should find the cosmetic, and we can say main or whatever. But it should be able to. So if the ID is empty, oh yeah. So in here we should do if ID is empty, return or ID equals string or current ID equals default or whatever the default value is. Okay, so that way because what will happen is the player might be loading the first time, they might not have any cosmetics, and so nothing is saved or loaded. And so if the first time they do this, it's going to be empty. So if it's empty, we want to set it to something. But that's something that we can do on the local player too. So in here, we can have a default value that's not empty, right? We can put the default value in here for that cosmetic. Okay, there's multiple ways of handling it to make sure, but you have to think of that edge case. Okay, so we have that index. Okay, so we have the index. Now, what we have to do is dots. Hold on. This has to be public. Do that. And what we'll do is we will trigger this because we want to force it. The reason why I do this is because oftentimes when you do a network object and you do inventory index, you're like, okay, I'm setting the index. If this value changes, it should automatically work. But sometimes it doesn't. So what happens is when you spawn, you might change it and you're the state authority, you're spawning the object, it's going to set it to the default value. And so that default value might be 20. And so you just not assume that this is going to trigger that on change event. So this on change event, sometimes it triggers, sometimes it doesn't. And so we also might not be doing it in the state authority for now. But anyway, so we have this, it change. Okay, and then the same thing we would do for the client. So this, what we're doing is this will already be updated. Okay, so we're just saying, hey, they should have the correct value, and it will spawn it. This is only for the owner of the item. Again, because it's a network object, it should propagate to everything. So they should have all the latest. Now what we'll do is, if I'm a state authority, the other thing I want to do is underscore scarf, or no, on what we didn't do, local. So we're gonna subscribe to that local event on scarf ID changed. Oh, come on. We're gonna add on scarf ID. Oh yeah, because in here we'll have a string ID. Because we have a string ID. Okay, now it'll match. And so we can do this for all of them, right? Like anytime, this is tying these together. I'm gonna show you again if it didn't. That this is right here, this arrow right here is tying it. Anytime this local player changes its scarf, it'll trigger. And then when this triggers, it'll run this, and then it'll change. So this all happens because the player swaps or because it's loading. Okay, so one or the other. So we are either loading or the local player swapped cosmetics. Okay, and then we have the inventory changed. Okay, and then in here we okay, so we have that. Okay, so it will change, and this will trigger for the ID. Okay, so on scarf ID changed. So when we changed, we're gonna do this, and we might be able to swap it. Anytime I copy paste, I'm gonna patch this one because every time. Oh no, we don't need to do that. Okay, so what we're gonna do is ID changed. Oh no. Okay, change. So let's do like this string scarf ID. I will change this. Sorry for the mix. It's just I'm trying to think and talk at the same time. Get cosmetic in. Okay. Wait, not. On scarf ID changed. You can do this. Okay. Instead of doing, and then in here, we'll do this right here. We don't need this anymore. Okay. So what we're doing is saying, okay, we are assuming it changed. So we're gonna change it. Okay. And this does that change that we, and this works for both, right? It changed for this event and for this one. Okay. I'm just not copy pasting code. So this one's the local. We have state authority. We're subscribing for it. Okay, so we're gonna do this. Okay, and then this one is just forcing the update. In this scenario, when it does change, it will trigger a change in ID. So we don't have to do anything because at this point, the network cosmetic display will do this trigger. Okay, it'll grab the ID, spawn it. Okay, so this is gonna work the way it is. Okay, and I know it seems like, okay, why don't you just do it in one place? And you can, but it's gonna get messy, especially if we have the hoodie, the hat, the belt. And so what we're doing is we're gonna set up multiple. This is what I'm gonna do on my time, and then I'm gonna show you. So I'm gonna do the hoodie, belt. What else do I have? Hat. Like if you have a headphone, hat. Okay. So these are our scarf cosmetic. Okay, I'm gonna show you. Okay, so we have all these. You can say click manager. Free player and the network scarf. So the scarf is right here in the empty container. See, so we have this empty container. The inventory index is 0 by default. It could be 500. Doesn't. So when this value changes, and so see how the default value is 0. So if we set it to 0, it's not going to spawn. This is not change. And so instead of trying to guess, or like say, let's set it to -1 by default. Right now, it will trigger the change no matter. I don't need to. But that means you have to set it to -1 every time. So I just prefer to just not care what it is and force it regardless. And now all I need to do is do the same thing again for the other ones. So scarf and belt. I would do this again for the belt. Belt ID. Okay. Do it here where I copy this, and we do the same thing again. Go through it all, and it sounds tedious because it is. On oops. Okay, let's see. Belt ID. Have that. On belt ID changed. Okay. Changed, and it's the same thing again, right? So it's, then we put it in here, we go through it again. This is all gonna work. So I'm gonna set it up. Next week we're gonna go over like all this. And why do I show you this? Is because I know this is more valuable than anything you could do with your time. These are the most valuable things, is being able to do your own network stuff and figure it out and understand all these things. So this is all for scarf. And so then we have to do the same thing for belt. Then we're going to 4 more times next week. All this will be filled up. This guy will be changed, and I'll set up a booth where you can just and swap them. You'll be able to see next week. Next week, we will see it. I'll show you live how it goes back and forth and how it all works and the network aspect. And then and then we can talk about monetization and other things. But the network aspect, how do you do it? How do you manage it? This is the stuff that we can definitely do. Okay, that's the video. Next week we will go part 2 and finish this up, and I'll show you everything connected.